I've always carried this deep belief in my heart, that family should stand by one another, no matter what. That's the way my parents raised me, and that's exactly what I try to pass on to my son Elliot. I believed if I showed him love, patience, and understanding, he would grow into someone who valued those same things. And maybe, for a time, he did. But looking back now, I can't help but wonder where things went wrong. Somewhere along the road, I must have taken a wrong turn. Maybe I was too soft on him. Maybe I gave in too easily. Maybe I never let him learn to struggle or take responsibility for his own choices. After my husband Randall passed away, something inside me shifted. I was heartbroken. Randall was not just my partner. He was the love of my life, my anchor. Losing him so suddenly made me afraid. Afraid that I'd lose Elliot too. So I stopped seeing things clearly. I ignored little signs, made excuses, looked the other way when I probably should have spoken up. I kept thinking, he's all I have left. And in doing that, I may have let my son slip further and further away from the values I tried so hard to teach. My name is Edith Winters. I'm 67 years old, and for the last 5 years, I've lived alone in the house Randall and I built a life in. A quiet home tucked in Purcellville, a small town with a gentle pace, just peaceful enough for someone my age to grow old in without feeling forgotten. It's not one of those tiny, empty places either. There's still life here, still a sense of connection. We bought this house nearly 3 decades ago, when Elliot was just 12 years old. I still remember the way his eyes lit up the day we moved in. He ran from room to room like it was a playground, calling dibs on the biggest bedroom before we even unpacked a single box. He was so thrilled about the oak tree in the backyard, already planning a treehouse before we even had curtains up. I can still picture him climbing that tree with Randall watching from the kitchen window. Back then, Randall worked as an insurance agent. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it was stable. It gave us a comfortable, honest life. I was teaching elementary school and I loved every bit of it. The laughter of children, the art projects, the field trips. We didn't have a fortune, but we never felt poor. And over time, with careful planning and a bit of luck, we made some smart financial moves. Randall was always thinking ahead. He was practical, steady. Edith, he would say with that serious look in his eye, we need to make sure you're taken care of when I'm gone. I'd always wave him off, telling him not to be dramatic. We were the same age, after all. Why worry about death when we were still living? But then it happened just like that. 5 years ago, Randall passed in his sleep. A heart attack. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. One day we were having dinner, and the next, I was waking up in a house that felt colder and emptier than ever before. I was completely lost. I could barely get out of bed in the mornings. I didn't know what day it was most of the time. It was during those early days of grieving that Elliot and his wife, Kamson, stepped in. They helped with everything. The funeral, the paperwork, even the bills I couldn't think straight enough to pay. I was truly grateful. And when my grandchildren, Pearl and Orion, started spending more time at my place, it felt like a piece of sunshine had come back into my life. Pearl was 9 then, always asking questions and baking cookies with me. Orion, only 5, loved to build pillow forts and pretend he was a knight. Their laughter filled the house again, and for a little while, I didn't feel so alone. But slowly, over the months, things began to shift. The visits from the kids became less frequent. Elliot started calling only when he needed help. Not with grief or support, but with money. At first, the requests made sense. A new school for Pearl. A special mattress for Orion's back. Of course I helped. I didn't hesitate. I told myself, what good is money if not for your family? Elliot would say, "Mom, we'll pay you back." But we both knew that wasn't going to happen. Tamsin, meanwhile, began using me as a backup babysitter. She'd drop the kids off without warning, barely making eye contact, always rushing. Her tone was clipped, distracted, like I was just another item on her to-do list. "Edith, no sweets after 6, she'd say at the door. "And make sure Pearl practices her multiplication tables." Her voice always carried this edge. Not quite rude, but never warm. She made comments that hinted at criticism, like blaming me for things that never even happened. "Just don't let them stare at their phones all night again," she once said. But I never did that. It was just easier to say nothing than to argue. Maybe that was my biggest mistake. No, it's just... He hesitated and let out a tired sigh. "Look, I'll talk to Tamsin, okay? Maybe we can figure something out." His voice didn't sound convincing. It was the kind of thing you say just to end a conversation you don't really want to have. I nodded slowly, but inside, I already knew how it would end. It always ended the same way. He'd wait a few days, call me again, and gently say he was sorry, that there just wasn't a way to make it work this time. That Tamsin had concerns, or the timing wasn't right, or they needed space as a couple. And once again I'd end up offering them money. Because I always did. Because I wanted them to enjoy life, even if that joy had no space for me in it. But this time I was wrong. Elliot didn't call. 3 days passed in complete silence. I tried not to stare at my phone every 5 minutes, telling myself not to expect anything. But when it finally did beep late that night, as I was just about to crawl into bed, my heart jumped. I fumbled for my glasses, my hands trembling slightly, and read the message. "Mum, I'm sorry, but you won't be joining us on the trip. Tamsin thinks you'll be a burden. I hope you understand. We're still counting on your help with the tickets." I stared at the screen. My eyes widened. Read it again. Then again. A burden. That's what I had become in their eyes. Not a mother. Not a grandmother. Not a person with feelings and memories and love to give. Just a burden. And not even one worth carrying. My son didn't want me with him. He only wanted the money. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, then sat by the window, staring into the still night. The stars above cold and distant, just like Elliot was now. My mind went over everything I'd done for them. Everything I had given. All the holidays I spent alone while telling myself they were too busy. All the money I wired without hesitation. All the moments I told myself it was fine, that parents eventually fade into the background. But it wasn't fine. And for the first time, I admitted that to myself. I picked up my phone again and reread his message, hoping desperately that maybe I had misunderstood something, missed a word, maybe misread the tone. "Tam thinks you'll be a burden." Where was the regret? The love? The kindness? There wasn't a trace of it, just cold detachment and expectation. A simple request for money, as if that was my only role now. I put the phone down slowly and moved toward the window. The world outside looked so peaceful, but inside me everything felt broken. I wondered, did Elliot ever pause to think how those words would feel to me? Or did he just send the text, roll over in bed, and start planning the hotel details with Tamsin, laughing about the Paris weather? Eventually, exhaustion won over the pain. I dozed off in the armchair by the window, the quiet ticking of the clock the only sound in the room. When the morning sun touched my face, I woke with a stiff neck and dry mouth. For a moment, I thought maybe it had been a bad dream. But there it was, my phone on the table, the message still glowing in my mind. Over coffee, I tried to calm myself, to make sense of it. Maybe Elliot had written it in a moment of stress. Maybe Tamsin pressured him, and he didn't know how to stand up to her. Maybe he didn't mean it to sound so cruel. Maybe he would call, apologize, tell me it was all a color, misunderstanding. But the phone stayed quiet all day. I cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry, made dinner. Every task felt like I was sleepwalking. My thoughts kept circling back to that one word. Burden. Once, I had been his whole world. I remember holding him when he had nightmares, bandaging scraped, knees, cheering the loudest at his school plays. He used to say I was the best mom in the world. I made the best blueberry pancakes. He once said he wanted to marry someone just like me. And then he met Tamsin. He introduced her to me first, before his own father, because he valued my opinion that much. What happened between then and now? When did I stop being his safe place and start being an inconvenience? That evening, the phone did ring. My heart skipped, but it wasn't Elliot. It was my friend Louise. We'd met at a book club a few years ago and stayed in touch ever since. "Edith?" she asked gently. "Ah, you okay? You didn't show up today." Only then did I remember I had completely forgotten the club meeting. We were supposed to discuss Catherine Elson's new novel, and I'd even written notes in the margins. My voice wavered as I answered, "I'm sorry, Louise. I was just distracted." "What's wrong?" she asked, her concern wrapping around me like a warm blanket. And I told her everything. I told her about the message, about the way Elliot and Tamsin used me, about the house I'd bought for them, about how invisible I had become in their lives. When I finished, she was silent. For a moment, then said, "Oh my God, Edith, that's awful. I can't believe Elliot would do this after everything you've given." "Maybe I'm overreacting," I whispered, still looking for a reason to defend him. "Maybe he didn't mean to be so cold." Louise's voice grew firm. "Edith, be honest with yourself. This isn't new. You've told me before how they didn't invite you to Christmas, but asked for gift money. How they forgot your birthday, but remembered when they needed car repairs. This isn't a one-time thing. It's a pattern." I stayed quiet. Deep down, I knew she was right. Every small insult I'd brushed aside. Every selfish act I'd excused, it all built up into a picture I couldn't ignore anymore. And I didn't. Like what I saw. "What are you going to do?" Louise asked. "I don't know," I answered truthfully. "I think I need time to think about it." After I hung up, I pulled out the family photo album. Page by page, I watched my son grow up. His baby smile. His first day at school. Holding hands with Tamsin at their wedding. Then pictures of their children, my grandchildren. I paused at a photo taken at Randall's funeral 5 years ago. Elliot had stood beside me, hand on my shoulder, his eyes full of tears. That was real. He had loved his father. Did he love me then too? Does he now? That night, I couldn't sleep again. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I needed to talk to Elliot directly. I called his office. His secretary said he was in a meeting. I left a message. He never called back. I tried again that evening. His phone was disconnected. He was avoiding me, and that was the last straw. I hung up and sent a message to Beatrice Lockwood, the realtor I had met yesterday. I confirmed that I was ready to start the process of selling the house immediately. Then I made a list of all the financial commitments I had made to Elliot and his family, from private school fees for their grandchildren to their car insurance. The list was impressive. I hadn't realized how deep they'd gotten their hands into my wallet. Beatrice responded almost instantly. "Great. I can come by for the pictures today around 2 p.m. If the house is empty, I'll have all the documents ready by tomorrow." It felt surreal hearing those words. Just a few months ago, I never Would have imagined myself being in this position, selling the very house my son and his family were living in. But life, it turns out, has a strange way of teaching us who truly values us, and who only keeps us around for convenience. I already knew their schedule by heart. Tuesdays were always the same. Tamsin treated herself to an all-day spa visit. The kids were gone at school until late afternoon, and Elliot, as always, would be at work. The timing was perfect. No one would be around. Yeah, 2 works, I replied calmly. No one's home then. I've still got a spare key. I hung up the phone and sat still for a moment, letting the weight of the situation settle over me. My heart felt a mix of steady determination and quiet nervousness. I was doing something huge, something that felt bold, and maybe even a little cold. Part of me still couldn't believe I had the courage to go through with it. I was about to sell the home where my son, daughter-in-law, and grandkids lived. And I hadn't told them a thing. But then the bitter memories crept in. The way they made me feel like a burden. How they saw me not as a person, but as a wallet. That part of me, the hurt part, knew this was the only path forward. I wasn't acting out of revenge. I was choosing self-respect. Later that morning I went to the bank. The employees greeted me with the polite warmth they always used for long-term clients. Mrs. Pratt, my financial advisor, smiled and led me to her office. I didn't hesitate. I'm about to receive a large sum from a property sale, I told her directly. I want to go over some smart ways to invest it. Her eyes lit up with interest. Absolutely, Mrs. Winters. We have several options depending on how much risk you're willing to take. Do you prefer something very safe or a bit more growth-focused? Moderate, I replied after a moment. I don't want to gamble with it. But I also don't want it just sitting in a savings account doing nothing. We spent nearly an hour going over options. She explained everything clearly, from low-risk bonds to medium-risk mutual funds. I listened closely, asked questions, and weighed my choices carefully. By the end of the meeting, I had a plan. I'd divide the proceeds from the house sale. Some would go into long-term, stable investments. The rest I'd keep more accessible for travel, personal needs, and maybe even a few spontaneous joys. Just before we wrapped up, I added, one more thing, I want to change my will. Mrs. Pratt looked up from her notes. You'll need a lawyer or a notary for that. We can refer someone, if you'd like. Thank you, I said. But I already have a lawyer. After Randall passed away, I'd revised my will to leave everything to Elliot. It had seemed obvious at the time he was my only child. But now that decision felt rushed. Naive even. As I stepped out of the bank, a strange sensation settled in. It was like I'd crossed a line I couldn't go back from. But it wasn't fear I felt. It was strength, confidence. I'd taken the first step towards something new. A new life. One where I would live for myself, not just for others. Back home, I turned to another long-held dream. Traveling. Randall and I had always dreamed of going to Italy together, exploring the hill towns of Tuscany, wandering through Florence's art museums, eating pasta in tiny family-run trattorias. But that dream had always been pushed aside. First it was Elliot's schooling, then came the grandkids, and finally Randall's failing health. Always a reason to wait. But now there was no reason left to wait. I opened my laptop and began researching. I found several tours designed for older travelers, small group sizes, experienced guides, and comfortable accommodations. I didn't want to go completely alone, but I also didn't want to get stuck in a noisy, chaotic bus group. I bookmarked a few of the best options and felt something warm in my chest. Hope. At exactly 2:00, I met Beatrice outside the house. She brought a professional photographer with her. They got to work right away, taking photos of every room, the garden, and the front entrance. I stayed in the car. I couldn't bring myself to walk inside. Too many memories lived there both. Good and bad. An hour later, Beatrice came back and showed me the photos on her camera. The house looked amazing. Big sunlit rooms, tastefully decorated. Everything in perfect shape, including the garden I paid for and maintained. It almost didn't look like the place I'd been pushed out of. "These are wonderful," Beatrice said cheerfully. "With pictures like these and a location like this, we'll find buyers fast. I've already spoken with a few people who are very interested." "How quickly can we close the deal?" I asked. Beatrice glanced at her calendar. "If we have a cash buyer and the documents are ready, we could close within a week." That was exactly what I wanted. Elliot and Tamsin were leaving for Europe in 10 days. "Then let's get moving," I told her. "I want everything finalized before... I paused, not wanting to air my family drama. "Before your son returns from Europe," Beatrice finished for me gently. Her tone was understanding. She didn't need the full story to see what was going on. "We'll make it happen." The very next day, she called me. "We already have 3 interested buyers," she said. 2 want to see the house today, and 1 tomorrow. I gave her the times the house would be empty. I didn't want to risk running into Tamsin or the children. I also decided not to attend the showings. I needed emotional distance. That evening, Beatrice called again with big news. "Mrs. Winters, we've received a serious offer. A married couple. He's a surgeon. She's a professor. They love the house and are ready to pay the full price. Best of all, they can pay in cash, no loans, no delays." It was exactly the kind of deal I'd been hoping for. Reliable buyers, fast closure, clean transaction. "When can we sign the papers?" I asked. "If all goes smoothly, we'll be ready to sign by the end of the week," she replied. I hung up. I sat alone in my living room for a long time. Silent. Thoughtful. I was doing it. I was selling the home where my son and his family lived. I was evicting them without warning. The thought sounded cruel. But then I reminded myself they had already evicted me. Not from a house, but from their hearts. And just then, my phone rang. "Elliot." "Mom," he said sharply, skipping the hello. "I just got a call from the bank." "Why did you cancel the payments?" His voice wasn't concerned. It was annoyed. "No." "Are you okay?" "No." "Do you need help?" Just irritation that his money tap had stopped. "I've decided to re-evaluate my spending," I replied calmly. "What are you talking about?" he said, clearly frustrated. "You know we rely on that money. And did you ever think to ask whether I rely on respect?" I shot back. "Or whether I'd like to be invited on your Europe trip, not just asked to fund it?" There was silence. "Mom," he said finally, more quietly now. Tamsin didn't mean to be rude. It was just a figure of speech. "Did you mean to hurt me?" I asked, "when you repeated her words so casually? When you didn't even try to soften them?" He sighed. "Let's not make this a big deal. It's a misunderstanding. But really, this is not the time to be stubborn. We need that money." "Well, I need something too, Elliot," I replied, feeling the anger rise. "I need to stop being treated like an open checkbook. I need to stop being the one who's left out of the fun but expected to pay the bill." "Mum, don't be like this. Of course, we love you." "Do you?" I asked. "When was the last time you called me just to talk, not for money? Not to ask for babysitting? When did you last take me to lunch? Or ask about my life?" He said nothing. That silence said everything. "I've made my decision," I told him. "I'm done paying your bills. From now on, you'll have to manage your own finances like grown-ups do." "But Mum, this conversation is over," I said. And I hung up. I sat still, my hands trembling. My heart raced. But along with the shock and nerves, there was a deep, satisfying peace. For once I had stood up for myself. The phone rang again. It was Elliot. I didn't pick up. Then a message buzzed in. Mum, we need to talk. It's important. I turned off the sound, placed the phone on the table, and walked away. Enough. I'd spent too much of my life trying to meet everyone else's needs, trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother. Now, it was finally time to take care of me.